All right, I'm back here with my boy Jordan Shallow, and we are going to do some bench press cues with my max bench press here. So, Jordan, before we get into this, how do you set somebody up for the bench press? What does it look like? What are some of the points? You have a 5-point?
Yeah, 5 points of contact. I mean, this is the biggest thing with bench press is too many people worry about like red herrings and strength based off just being in a bad position from the get-go. They don't set up properly, the bar path travels incorrectly, and they end up expressing a weakness in a place that they might not otherwise express if they had set up properly from the start, right? So a lot of people will hammer their triceps or their shoulders as a way to build up the main sticking point or weakness, where that might not even be the problem at all. So we're gonna walk through 5 points of contact on the bench to make sure that our setup is reproducible every single time and that we can express strength in how we actually can move the bar in a way that's not sort of a red herring and is going to lead us down a path of accessory work that we might not otherwise need to do.
Now, how important do you think that is to when you are bench pressing? I mean, I would think right away, you're saying it like to maximize your bench press, but even like to prevent from getting injured and hurt too.
Oh, sure, yeah, and the two are one and one, right? Like if usually the safer you are on the bench, the stronger you're going to be because you can continue to bench and continue to make progress.
I remember as a trainer when I first started, I used to tell people to flatten their back on the bench, which is totally wrong.
And from a strength standpoint, it's just not maximizing leverages, I guess would be the best way to put it. But there are some instances where a flatter back could be better if the goal is to move more weight, then yeah, I don't really think you can argue with the arch. The thing is, it's safe. I mean, we'll get through it as we walk through the 5 points, but the bench arch being, you know, the cause of spine cancer that everyone thinks it's going to be is just not true.
It's I mean, the reason why I bring that up is because when I look at all the you know, YouTube internet trolls, it's what I see most people commenting about is the excessive arch. Oh, that's crazy, that's bad form. Or people think that it's only for power lifters. So.
Yeah, no, I mean a moderate arch, I mean a lumbar spine is an extended curve by nature. To flatten that out is actually discontinuous with our normal biomechanics. So whether you're the soccer mom or the elite powerlifter, some arch is usually indicated. Now that scales relative to your end goal, but yeah, an arch is fine.
Cool. So take me through. You first focus on the feet.
Start with the feet. Yeah, I mean the movement gets grounded into the floor just like any other one of like the main compound lifts, squat, bench, squat or deadlift, Olympic lifts. So we're gonna start with the floor. The biggest problem I see with position is that people start with an obtuse angle at the knee. So
in other words, your feet out too far.
Outside 90. Basically, a good rule of thumb is have your heels at the very least under your knees. Okay. Right? Now, with a more excessive arch, those heels are going to come back further. That's going to allow, when you create that leg drive, to sort of make a systemic tension through the feet up into the spine. Now, a more neutral, moderate leg drive would be more that 90 degree in the knee, but excessive arching usually requires the feet tucked back.
Okay, so the more your back is arched, the more you probably should put your feet back, the more of a natural arch you have, but nobody should be out in front.
No.
Everybody should be 90 or brought back in.
I don't like speaking in absolutes, but that's probably the closest absolute that you're going to find. Is at least 90 degrees to create tension.
And then what do you think about this?
There's a time and a place for everything. I mean, I maintain.
Come on, be honest.
You're going to get more core activation lifting heavier weights.
Okay.
And you're going to lift heavier weights with your feet on the floor.
Right.
That's my position on that. But yeah, for this, we're going to feet at 90 in relation to the knees. And then when we fall back, the next point of contact we're worrying about is the butt, right? Now, the feet position, especially you're a long dude, right? So if you're going to tuck these heels all the way back, and if you create a vertical leg drive, your butt's coming off the bench. Yeah. Right? So the key with the feet position is to create a horizontal leg drive. So you're pretty much leg driving into your upper back. So the butt wants to stay down. That's a pretty easy point of contact. Everyone should know that the butt stays on the bench. But where you set your feet can sort of, with the wrong intention, lead us to create a vertical leg drive that rises our hips and brings our butt off the bench. So butt stays anchored, feet stay. And they don't have to be totally on the floor like the way you have it now. But that's the thing, you can keep it up on your toes. As the bar lowers, what I would say in this position, for those of you that do want to create more tension through a bigger arch, is have the intention of driving these heels into the floor. So to lock in, it's heels down, chest up. Right? So we have the 2 points of contact right now.
I can already feel that difference just when I retract, get myself, pretending I had the bar, and then thinking about pushing the heels down a little bit.
And this is where the next point of contact is probably the most crucial. That's the upper back, right? So we've created that nice arch. I mean, depending on how or what your goal is, that arch is going to increase or decrease, but we do have some arch. Now this is where the leg drive gets expressed, right? we are thinking of leg driving into our upper back to create that arch, right? So what I want to make sure shoulder blades not just together, but together and down.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
So
gonna.
what do you think about this? I use normal, because almost every bench you'll have these, your poles on the side. I'll take those and I use them to kind of wedge my shoulder blades back and down.
Yeah, that's perfect. You'll see two permutations of this. What you did, or what guys will do, is they'll actually start their setup from behind the bench.
Yeah,
so heads, and then they set their feet first, and they basically pull their tension into their feet, and then drive their tension back into the upper back.
Okay.
But what you're doing there is perfect, as long as the intent is retraction and depression, because those shoulder blades are going to lock in that upper back.
So I want to show the camera what we're looking for is what I'm doing is I'm taking these shoulder blades back and down.
Exactly. Yeah.
Locking into place.
Yeah, that's going to leave the actual glenohumeral joint, the shoulder, in a lot safer position to press.
Okay.
The flat, it gets a little precarious when it comes to flat back benching and the shoulder mechanics. So the arch is actually safer for the shoulder.
Okay.
Okay, so we got 3 points in. We got the feet, the butt, the upper back, the head.
Okay.
Now, this is where the bench arch potentially gets dangerous. So I'm not at all worried about your position of your spine here through the lumbar and the thoracic area. Lumbar spine is meant to extend. Thoracic spine has ribs. We can extend it all day. That circumferential distribution of the pressure through the ribs is going to make sure that the spine itself stays safe. With a big arch, what you need to worry about is your relative position of your cervical spine. So you're fairly moderate even in this position.
And what he's saying is, what you mean is if I have this excessive arch and then my neck is kind of kinked.
Yeah,
like
so what people will do is they'll even flex their head forward more as that bar comes down. So that's a position you really, if we're worried at all about the spine with the arch, we're not worried about here. We're worried about the neck, because that relative flex position that's not good for discs, that's not good for spines. So if you do have an excessive arch, try and make sure that we're not making the cervical spine curve any greater, that we're allowing it to just stay in neutral.
So do you cue like a chin tuck or anything? I mean, are you just making sure they're not doing this crap?
Exactly. And I mean, there's some level of cervical spine flexion that's going to be inevitable with bigger guys. Like as you squeeze your back and pull that bar in your chest, if you have traps, your head will rise up a little bit. But as long as the intention isn't to bring the neck forward, there's not that active flexion through the cervical spine, then we're going to be safe.
Which is common, and I think it's important to note that, because I do catch guys sometimes that are benching like this.
Yeah.
That have got their heads elevated way off the bench when they do that, because they have such poor forward head.
Yeah, no point. Okay. So we're 4 points in. We have feet, butt, upper back, and head. Now, lastly, the hands. Now, grip width is going to be, as long as it's symmetrical, I mean, that's sort of the first goal. Then grip width is going to vary depending on your leverages, depending on your weak points, depending on what you're going to want to overemphasize. So obviously, the closer grip, more triceps; wider grip, more delts and pecs rather. I would say for you, that's a fairly neutral grip.
Okay.
Right? So we'll go ahead and rack that. I want you to bring it into a close grip, and this is one thing I want to highlight. So exactly. So that's a close grip for you.
Yep.
That's my competition grip.
Oh, wow.
But what I don't want to see, and what I see a lot of, is people grabbing in the middle, right? Because where it gets really dangerous, that's a good close grip, because that's a neutral shoulder position for you. The one cue that, I'm going to bring it back, and I'm actually going to cue you in a bad position. Okay. The one cue that I see a lot, people think there's this idea of dose dependency, right? Like that's everything fitness. If some is good, more is better. So if close grip is good for triceps, closer grip is great for triceps. But that actually puts our wrist in a bit of an odd position, because we have to deviate the wrist. So making sure we emphasize, if we are going to go close grip, that it's just straight out from the shoulders. That's your close grip.
That's good to know. And then from here too, I guess if you really wanted to put more emphasis, you would just keep the elbows tucked in, right?
And that's the thing. The last point I wanted to make about grip is the intent on the bar, right? Because when you just did that, your hands turned in, right? So the intent on the bar is a lot more obvious when we're training with dumbbells. Like when we externally rotate, our hands move in as an expression of that, and we press, our hands move forward. Now, just because we're not going to physically be able to bend the bar doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Okay. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try to externally rotate on the way down as we lower into that eccentric, and internally rotate on the way up as we go through that concentric phase of the movement. So grip width makes a difference, but also the intent of what you do at that width is going to make a difference.
Is that because a lot of that is safer for the shoulder, because now by thinking about bending the bar, now my lats kind of help resist it on the way down? Is that the thought process?
When you do that, you're eccentrically loading the capabilities of internal rotation of the lats. So it kind of saves the pecs, because the last thing you want to do is flare out here. right? That guillotine press from a strength standpoint is going to be the last thing you want to go.
So I actually want to talk about that for just a split second, because this is the bodybuilder versus the power lifter thing. Like,
Yeah.
So I was taught when I was younger to lift more like a bodybuilder, where you flare, because then their idea is, I want more tension, and this is where this comes from. Then is the flaring of the elbow is going to keep more tension on the chest, because I don't allow the lats to kind of kick in to help the resistance on the way down.
Yeah, but to tear something,
it's more
you
likely
need to stretch it. Yeah, and the other thing too is people like the idea of straight bar path. Like when we squat, when we deadlift, when we clean and jerk, when we snatch, that bar more or less goes through a straight bar path. But all of those movements are different from the bench press because we're horizontally loaded, right? So when we vertically load, physics and biomechanics are the same thing. Any deviation through the horizontal plane is going to be inefficient. It's going to leave us in a weaker position, right? Like if our hips have to travel to accommodate for the bar when we're squatting, then we're going to lose power. We'll potentially lose the lift. But when you unrack this bar starts over your chin. You're touching this bar down here. That's about 6 inches of horizontal travel. But that's the thing. We're not worried about physics. We're worried about biomechanics. We're worried about lowering that bar into a position where our muscles can express more strength. So that's the big sort of misconception with that straight bar path, that elbows flared, that bodybuilder style, is that people end up flaring to keep a straight bar path, whereas like you actually want to tuck that in, and it's okay to have some horizontal travel of the bar.
Now, when I come in, then is there any emphasis on me trying to tuck the elbows tighter, or is it okay if I'm relaxed and kind of flared out?
Yeah, I mean, you could still be flared a little bit. Like you're still, relative shoulder position is still at 45, even when you're relaxed and flared at the bottom, because you do want to be able to call on that pec to finish the movement. So you do want to create some tension. Like it's not by any stretch of the imagination on all a lat movement. So that's perfect, yeah.
And I'm also thinking about bending the bar as I'm coming down.
Yeah, it's almost like you're squeezing more through the pinkies on the way down.
Yes. That's great. Good. And that is how you set up for a bench press. Listen, we drop a video every single day. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share.